I'm going to link when I put the link in there for the day's meeting, sometimes it won't be finished processing. It doesn't mean, it'll tell you like this is processing. I just put it up there as soon as I can, and it'll just process, and within I don't know, like an hour, it'll come up. Okay. So don't think it's a bad link or something. It's not a bad link. Okay.
Sounds good.
And again, one of the value of that to me is, I don't want you guys sitting here trying to remember every little thing. And by the way, a lot of these things I'm going to go through, if you're totally new to Photoshop, they might seem kind of weird. I mean, they did to me, but one thing I've noticed with younger people is that you guys are digital natives. You grew up with this stuff. My generation didn't. So it all seemed like Star Trek crap to us. It doesn't to you guys. Okay. So you guys tend to get it faster. And what I don't want to do, because I'll say sometimes like, oh, I think this is kind of, odd the way they do this or whatever. I don't want to put it in your head that it's hard, because it's actually not. It's just when I first did it, again, Photoshop just has sort of its own logic. Okay. And then once you know the logic, it's no big deal. Okay. And also a lot of the terminology in Photoshop is coming out of the darkroom. Okay. Dodging, burning, all that kind of stuff. That language comes out of the darkroom. All right. Because Photoshop obviously originally was meant to kind of emulate a digital darkroom. Okay. Now it's expanded into this huge thing where it's painting tool, it's a drawing tool, it's a design tool, it's a Photoshop, it's a photo editing tool. It's all these different things now. Okay. And they're finally starting to acknowledge that a little bit. Let me pull up Photoshop here. And then I'll share my screen with you here in a minute. Okay. Let's go to, okay. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, so everybody can see my screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so when you pull up Photoshop, you guys, actually another thing I want to talk about real quick is, because you're going to need to use this as you get going. This is, hang on. This is Bridge, okay? I don't know if any of you guys have ever used this, but it's a really useful tool. And I'm just going to talk briefly about it, because you can kind of get into it once I kind of show you what it is and play with it. Okay, so what's going to happen today is I'm going to go over this, and then I'm going to hand it over to you guys. And I don't know how long we'll go today. I have no idea, okay? And then tomorrow, I'm going to, when I put up the link for today's or for tomorrow's meeting, there'll also be a link to a Google Drive folder. And what I want you to do is drop what we're working on today into that folder. Okay. This is an exercise, and it's a process. So whatever we go over today, if you kind of get stuck somewhere on it or whatever, that's why we're in class tomorrow, and I'm going to go over these things. Okay. And I'm going to want you to drop your layered file in there, and that'll make sense after we talk today. Sometimes I'm going to ask you for a JPEG, and sometimes I'm going to ask you for a layered file. The layered file, the reason I want it is so if I'm correcting it, I need to be able to play with all the different layers. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so Bridge is basically just an organizational tool, but what I like it for, like yesterday, I had to find a video that I edited quite a while ago, but I want to repurpose it for something else. I couldn't find it. So I can come in here and go through this filter right here. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
And I can put like, and this will make sense in a minute, I can check things like no keywords. Like this one says, it popped this in here and it says cat is a keyword, right? I can add a keyword, but I'm just going to click this one and space, and this image comes up, okay? Which is, because it has that in the title, okay? But I could add a keyword to that if I wanted to. So when I go back, and this happens to me all the time. It happened to me when I was working on a big toy project, okay? And the client came back to me and said, hey, we like that version that you did 3 versions ago. and I had like, I don't know, 1,000 different sketches and all these kind of things. Now I could never find it. I had to recreate it, which is a total nightmare because I can't charge them for that because it's my fault I lost it. This, you know, this will help you find things like that, and you can organize them in a way where they're easier to find. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking, I just put this folder together just with a bunch of random sketches and stuff. One of the things you can do in here that I really like is that you always end up on a project, and you're going to do it in here probably, where you go, I like this up to here, but I want to try this. So you'll make a new version of the whole file, right? You might end up with, if you're working on a big project, it might be 10, 20, who knows how many versions of things you have, okay? But you can come in here and you can pick any of these images. These are all in a folder, okay? And I could go to, let's see. I could come over here and I can add keywords here, okay? Like just like we talked about, which is right here, new keyword, and I can add it in. So when I go back to find this, if that's a keyword that rings in my head, when I do that, this is gonna pop up, okay? And again, your files are gonna get crazy when you're doing, especially client stuff, okay? One of the things I like is right here, if you look below this little image right here, there's a starring system. So I could come in here and go, this one, it's about a 3, let's say, okay? Or let's see. I can do it up here too, under label. Hang on. My computer's lagging. Okay, so what that starring system does, if you let's say you had 25 photos for a project, and you went through and you went, okay, this one, that's a 3-star contender, this one's a 2-star, here's my 1-stars, okay? So when you go back, you can just go back through them that way, and you know, you don't have to go through them again, because I do this all the time where I put stupid names on the files where I go, good, use this one. After a while, it just gets confusing, okay? But if I star it, I know when I go back, I don't have to go back through it and figure that out again. I just go, oh, these are the ones I liked. And then, does that make sense?
Definitely.
So it's really simple. All I got to do is just go under here and star it, right? I don't know why my computer's so slow. Hang on. The other thing you can do, as soon as this comes up, and I'll show you, is I can hit, there's another category in here where it says approve and those kind of things, right? So if I'm going through a client thing, or if I'm running the job, I can go through all my freelancers or all my team's work and go, these are the ones I approved, and I can just hit them. And it just makes it so much easier to organize your information that way. Does that make sense? Yes? And I'll show you as soon as this thing stops thinking. I'm gonna quit out of this and relaunch it. And the reason I'm talking about this is because you need to start doing, it's a good tool to start using right away, okay? Okay.
And so Bridge is like integrated with like Creative Cloud, or like how exactly does it work?
Yeah,
Like,
it's integrated with Creative Cloud, and it's also, and I'll show you here as soon as it comes up, hang on. It literally talks back and forth with like Photoshop, Illustrator, things like that, okay? And there's a little icon on here. Hang on, I gotta pull it over again. There's a little icon right there, boomerang, and it says return to Photoshop. So if I push that, it pulls Photoshop back up. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Okay.
And yes, the Creative Cloud for the most part is integrated with each other. It's part of the reason that they keep such a stranglehold on their industry status as the industry standard software, because it's all integrated. It actually, all of it is, I mean, it's great software. I mean, if you've been using it forever, you have your gripes about it, all that kind of thing. I don't understand why they don't embrace the painting side of it more and so on and so forth, but so what? Okay. It's still the industry. And here's the thing with you guys. We are big on industry standard software, okay? If you go to a job and they go, okay, here's your space, here's your Cmyk, here's your this, here's your that, and you're like, okay, cool, I use Clip Studio. And they're like, we don't use Clip Studio. We use Adobe. You know what I mean? Now, not to say if you're a freelancer and you're sending them files and everything, that could be okay. you have to know industry standard software. You cannot come into a situation and go, oh, I don't use ZBrush or Maya. I use this weird free software. They're like, no, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's got to be cross-platform.
And it's with everything. It's with 3D software. It's with 2D software. Learn your industry standard software. Now that's loosening up a little bit. And like if I was doing an illustration job, I did a job for the city of Riverside a couple of years back, and it was a homeless housing development. Okay, so it was a big, housing development. And I did that whole thing on my iPad because I didn't feel like being chained to my studio, okay? Which was great, right? Now, when I send them those files, they don't give a crap how I made those files, That's fine. But if I'm in-house, it's a little different, okay? So, okay, so I can go through here and I can star these things. And then I can also, let's get rid of this. I can also go up here to label and go, see right here, it says second, approve, review, to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if I come in here and I go, okay, this is my approved one, now it's got this green bar. So when I come in here, whether you're working on your own stuff or whether you're running a team, especially this kind of stuff where you go in, because I've done this a lot, because you have so much stuff coming across your desk that somebody will show you something, you go, I don't know about that. And they'll go, you approved it. You know what I mean? And then you go, did I? I don't think I would have approved that. And I don't like doing that because 90% of the time I'm wrong and it makes me look like a jerk.
Yeah.
That's why I like this, because I can go in and go, oh, you're right, I did approve that. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So it's really simple. The tools are just right down here. There's a whole bunch of other stuff in this program that you can do, but I don't use it for that. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't, but mostly for organizational stuff. The other thing you can do that I think is interesting is you can go here. And go to Photoshop and go contact sheet, okay? So let's say I got a bunch of photographs. And I did this to me yesterday where it told me it's working on something, which it's not. Hang on. Let's see what's good. Okay, do you guys know what a contact sheet is?
No.
Okay, so contact sheet, again, is darkroom terms, okay? What you used to do is you would get all your negatives. Okay, see how it just pulled up a sheet here with all my images?
Yeah.
Okay, I know that seems like a nothing thing. It's a big deal, okay? Because a lot of times when you're doing this, you might have, 50 sketches, 50 designs, 50 photos, and you just want to throw it at somebody to look. It doesn't have to be a client. It might be a team member, something like that, and go, hey, take a look at these. Which ones do you think are kind of interesting or whatever? And instead of having to grab all those things and pull them into Photoshop and arrange them, it makes a contact sheet. And where that terminology comes from is when you used to do photography, you would take all your negatives and basically you just put them on a piece of photo paper. Okay? You put them under the light thing, whatever that's called. I don't know why I can't think of that now. And you'd expose it, and then you put it in your chemicals, it pull up, and it would just do a sheet of all your images on your all your negatives, so you could just kind of look at them with the loop. That's what you see people doing in old footage of like magazines, where they have all these things down. They're all looking at it in a loop. Was contact sheets. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just a way of putting all your images together very quickly. And then it gives the names down here and all that kind of stuff. It's just, that's a really nice function. And again, I know it doesn't sound like anything. When you got 5 minutes to get something off to somebody, even if you don't have 5 minutes, or if you have more time, this is just, I don't want to spend my time doing this. I just want to go here. Okay. So that's a contact sheet. Okay. And it's up here. Again, you're going to have all this on video, so it doesn't really matter. You can go back to it.
Professor, I got a question.
Yeah.
So let's say you're working on a project in Photoshop and you save it. Will that file automatically be put into Bridge, or do you have to like manually locate it there?
Bridge is more of an organizational thing. It's not that it's putting it into Bridge. It's that Bridge is going in and going, hey, you want to organize this folder? Now you can create a folder in Bridge, but it's just going to live somewhere on your computer, just like a regular folder. So you can create a folder on Bridge and put all these things in there right away. and do it that way, but it's still going to live wherever you put it, your desktop or wherever you like putting it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
It's a organizational thing, right? Another thing you can do, I love the starring system and I love the approved system and all that kind of stuff. On a big job, that is so helpful. And it'll be helpful in here. There was something I was just going to say. Oh, you can go here and go. Let me find it. Oh, right here, batch rename. So I can hit that. It's going to give me this, and I can go project, I don't know, 22. You can play around the sequence number and all this kind of stuff, and I can go rename. And it renames all of these with a project name. So I could, instead of having it be project 22, I could say project Photoshop 101 or just Photoshop 101. Okay, and it'll just rename them all and give them a sequence number. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also really helpful. As soon as you grab all this stuff, you put it in a folder, go name it whatever your project name is, and then every time you search for that project name, it's going to come up. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so all that makes sense, right? That's fairly simple. I want you to play with that overnight, tonight, or today. Just go in there and start playing with it. What we're going to do, I think I already said this, but what we're going to do is we'll start this today, and then tomorrow I'll go over all your questions and everything with everything, okay? Is there any questions on that?
So, Mike, do we download Adobe Bridge ourselves just from the website, or is that should be under Creative Cloud account?
That should be under your Creative Cloud account.
Okay.
There should be, if you've got a full Creative Cloud account. And by the way, I got to still get that PDF for the Photoshop thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a full Photoshop account, you've got a ton of programs in there. And you got Lightroom in there, you got Animate, you got InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop. I mean, a whole bunch of stuff. Stuff I haven't even heard of. Okay?
Okay.
Every time I go in there and they put out a new release, I'm like, I never heard of this program, you know? Okay, let's go to Photoshop. Now, when you open Photoshop, you're going to get this, okay? So we can go to Create New. Well, let's go back one. Hang on. This is going to give you all your recently opened files, okay? So if I just double click this, it'll just open a file, and there it is, okay? Now, the one thing I've noticed about this is whenever I want it to show me a recent file, it never does, which is super weird to me. It's like, I just worked on that, and I need it, and it doesn't show up. But for the most part, it works fine. But for our purposes, we can go here to Create New, and it's going to give you this window here, okay? Which if you've been in Photoshop or InDesign, they look similar. That's the other thing, is that there's a similarity across programs, obviously, in Creative Cloud, okay? And the other nice thing is, like, if you know Photoshop, it's not a very big leap to learn Premiere, which is industry standard film editing software, or video editing software, okay? It's actually not that big a leap. It's still using layers and using the same language and a lot of the same tools, okay? So we're going to go to, let's go to, so if you look up here, it has a lot of categories. So if I go to print, it's going to give me the standard print sizes, legal, tabloid, A4, all that stuff. And then if you look over here, and this is important, right here, okay, here's your orientation, which you're probably familiar with from other classes or other programs. Here's your width, here's your height, and then here's your resolution, okay? And this is RGB color, okay? Now I'm going to reiterate this a lot. RGB color basically means that you're working for something for like the web screen, okay? If you go to, these are different things. If you go to CMYK, CMYK basically means you're working for print, okay? Also, 300 DPI is your basic DPI for print, okay? If I'm working on RGB, I'm usually going to be working in 72 DPI, okay? So which is what I have right now, okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, because CMYK, and I'll get into this a little more later, and I'm going to touch on a lot of things early on today and things like that that you're going to go, I don't get that or whatever. I'm going to talk about it a lot more as we go. I'm never going to throw something out there and leave you all confused about it. So I'm just letting you know further on down the line, I will get further into these things, okay? All I want you to remember right now is that CMYK is basically print and RGB is basically screen 72 dpi, print 300 or above. Okay, it's usually 300, okay? And CMYK relates to the 4-color printing process. They have a cyan plate, they have a yellow plate, they have a magenta plate, and they have a black plate. They put those things together as little half-tone dots, and that's what creates a continuous tone image like a photograph, okay? And usually in class, and I'll try and find maybe some examples of it online. Usually in class, I bring a loop in and we look at a lot of different print jobs, and you see how it's actually printed, okay? Which I can probably find online. All right, so we have this document open, okay? Now, if you look over here in my layers, see how it says background? Can you guys see that on my layers?
Yes.
Okay. What that means is if and this will make more sense as we go, this is your foreground and background swatch right here, right? And I can click this little thing here, and I can switch them back and forth, okay? Or I can go X, and it'll switch them back and forth, okay? When you open a document like this, it automatically opens to background, and if you notice, it has a little lock icon next to it on the layer. That means you can't really do much with it, and if I pull something out of it, like if I go, let's put this black as our background layer, okay, or a background color. If I go in here and I go, okay, I want to take this section and delete it. See, it won't even let me cut it, okay, because it's on this background layer. But if I do anything to this layer, it's flat, which means, now if I go like this, watch. I'm going to go right here, which is, we'll create a new layer, okay? And it's not doing anything. Hang on. It's over here. Wait a minute. Let's do this first real quick. You got. I got 2 screens going here, so sometimes something goes behind my Zoom window and I forget about it. So I'm just gonna, this is asking me what I want to fill this with, and I'm gonna say my background color. Okay, so what it did was, when I tried to delete this, it doesn't really let me delete it because it's flat, okay? And this will make sense in a minute. So what it actually did was it filled it with, I picked my background color, okay, which is this background swatch. Does that make sense? Okay, so literally that foreground background swatch, you're usually gonna use your foreground swatch, that's just your default. Let's go and fill this again. So let's go up to here, go edit, fill. And I'm gonna go back to my foreground color. Usually you're using your foreground color, okay? And I'm gonna go, okay. So now it just filled it with white because that's my foreground color, okay? Now, if I create a new layer here, right here, and now if I go, and I'm going to double click this layer right here, and it's going to give me this dialog box, okay? That dialog box is going, do you want to make this a regular layer and not a background layer? Which, yes, that's what I want to do. So I'm going to say, okay. So now, if I do the same thing, where I take this section, and I go delete, well, let's just go cut. And I delete it out of there. It's showing through now. Does that make sense? So this checkerboard pattern, all that means is now it's transparent. There's nothing on that layer. So let's turn this top layer off, or this layer off. And that's an empty layer. Does that make sense? That checkerboard thing is just telling you this is an empty layer with nothing on it. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when I first started this, I don't know why, but the background foreground swatch thing made no sense to me. I have no idea why. It was just one of those weird things where I was like, I don't get this. Like, why, you know? But obviously it's not that difficult. It was just me. Okay, let me take a shot of this. Hang on, I gotta get a shot of this. Okay, does that make sense so far? Okay, and by the way, what if it doesn't make sense? I want you to tell me right now, but it'll start making more sense as we move through it. Okay, when I first started learning this stuff, I actually learned this stuff on the job, because when I because this stuff was just starting, you know, at that time, like in the mid '90s or whenever it was. I was like, screw this. Okay, as far as in a classroom, because they didn't teach it well. At least my teacher didn't. And I was sort of like, I want to concentrate on my skill set, my fundamental skill set, my drawing, my painting, all that stuff. And then when I got my first toy job, and I actually went through Imagineering without knowing any of it. And then when I got my first toy job, they hired me right away, basically. And then they go, and I go, hey, you know, I don't know Photoshop and all that. And they go, oh, your skill set's great. We'll teach you all that. The way they taught me was they go, when I got there, the first, I think it was Monday, they go, hey, we got a presentation on Friday. And I started working on the presentation. I'm knocking out marker comps. They go, no marker comps, digital. So they just took me and threw me in the deep end of the pool. And that's how I learned it, okay? Which I'm kind of glad about, because I had to learn it really fast, but it was also trial by fire, and it was super nerve wracking, okay? So be careful when people tell you they're gonna train you on something. Okay, so I'm gonna refill this, which again, I went up here, edit, fill, okay? And then I'm just gonna keep it on foreground color. Because now if I swap this forward, or let's pick a different color, let's go up here to swatches. By the way, all your palettes, your tool palettes live under window, okay? All your palettes live under window. So if you need to go in and pull up a palette for a specific tool set, it will live under window, okay? So I'm gonna go here, and you would go to swatches. I already have it open, okay? And let's pick a different color. Let's pick this orangey color. Okay, now that's our foreground color. So now if I fill it, it's gonna fill it with that color, okay? Just whatever the foreground color is, if you have it set to foreground. Now, let's look at this a little bit. I'm just gonna go through these simple tools, and I'm gonna skip over some that are more complicated, and I'm gonna go over later. So this is your move tool, which does, let's put something here so we have something to do. I'm gonna go on this new layer I created right here. And I'm gonna take this tool right here, which is self-explanatory. It's a Marquee Tool. In this case, I'm using the square one. I'm gonna fill this, go up here to edit, fill. Now, this is on its own layer. So if I go to this move tool, it does exactly that. It just moves it around, okay? I like the ones that are easy. This is your Marquee Tool. If you click and hold it, you can get elliptical or rectangular, okay? So if I go on here and I make another shape, if I hold Shift, it's gonna make a perfect square. If I don't, I can move it around. Same thing with the ellipse tool. If I just don't hold Shift, it's gonna let me do all this stuff. Or if I hold Shift, it'll lock it, okay? And then I could fill it if I want, okay? Now, both of these things are on the same layer, so if I move one, it's gonna move the other one. They're on the same layer. And then if I wanna turn off this layer, I just do that, okay? This is the Magic Wand tool, so if I come over here and I click on this shape, it'll select like pixel. So it'll select similar, if it's black and white value, or if it's color, it'll select similar colors. This is an easy tool, and we're gonna start going through selection tools in a simple way today. This is a tool that you gotta be careful of. It's an amateur tool, to be honest with you. There's certain times where it'll work, like this, where it's just super clear that it's white and orange. It'll pick it pretty good. If you have a complex image like a forest, you go, I wanna select that tree, it's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work, okay? Now, all these tools, as soon as I pick a tool, let's get rid of this. So let's pick magic wand tool. If you look up here in the control bar, if I select different tools, the kind of common adjustments will appear up in your control bar, okay? So like with your magic wand tool, I don't care about that. The tolerance right here, and you're gonna see this on a lot of tools, if I pull down the tolerance, it's gonna not select as much. And then if I put, I don't know, 100, it's gonna try and select everything. So it's just how much you're selecting. Does that make sense? It's just an adjustment, okay? Now, once in a while that tool is helpful. Most of the time it's not. It leaves fringy edges and stuff like that. It doesn't usually work all that great, okay? But within here, we don't want to do quick selection yet. Here's your brush tool, which is self-explanatory, okay? Again, your tool set is right here. You can pick different brushes. You can set the size of the brush here, the hardness of the brush, how hard or soft it is, like right there. I can make it less softer or harder, just like a regular brush, okay? So a softer brush is gonna look more like that, okay? And if I pull it over to a harder edge, it's gonna look more like that. That make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm on the wrong layer. Actually, I should be on the other layer. So let's fill this layer again. I want to put this above it. Now, also notice with your layers, the way I always liken the layers, because I come from a traditional background, is like if I'm gonna do like corrections on your stuff, and I do an overlay over it. When I do that in a traditional drawing class, I put a piece of trace over it, and I draw over the drawing, right, and correct it. That's what layers are. It's tracing paper on top of each other. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go through here. This is your, I don't know why that's not coming out. It should be your dodge tool. Yeah. Okay, so if you look, can you see how that's making that lighter? You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's your dodge tool. That's what it does, is it just pulls up the lightness. Again, this is a darkroom term. When you used to have the, God, what's the thing called that you used to use to expose photography? I can't think of it.
The lamp.
No, it's a, God, I can't believe I can't think of it. Oh, well. The thing, that put the light out or whatever. You cup your hands and things like that, and you dodge or burn certain areas, what meant you were either making it lighter or a little bit darker, okay? So that's your dodge tool. Then if you go here, this is your burn tool, so it's gonna do the opposite, make it darker, okay? Does that make sense? Now, if you notice with the dodge tool, and we'll get into this later, these are simple tools, and what people tend to do, and as soon as we do our first project, you'll start using those tools. But what I'm always gonna try and get you guys to do is like think within the tool set, okay, on your own. And what you got to be careful of with the dodge and burn tools is that you'll go in there and go, oh, I want to make this lighter, like the sun's hitting it, and then it'll just wash it out with the white, and it's like, that doesn't look like the sun's hitting it. There's no color in it. And the same thing can happen with the dodge tool or the burn tool, where you go in and it just, see how it's making it like an ugly gray value?
Mm-hmm.
It's not very appealing. That doesn't feel like a shadow value to me, okay? You know, shadow value to me, oops. Would be more, you know, it always puts everything over to the left, you guys. That's why there's this lag with me. You know, I might just want to go to a darker value with some color in it, and, you know, and do it that way as opposed to doing it with the burn tool, okay? That'll be up to you when we get to that. Okay, this is the eraser tool, self-explanatory, erases, okay? This is your type tool. When you select that tool and you click, it gives you that, and then I can go, and then I can select it, and then I can come up here to my tool control bar, and I can go, I want light, I want to make it a little bigger, so on and so forth, right? And it's going to pick the foreground color, okay? Unless you tell it different. Also, notice over here, it makes its own type layer. Okay, so it makes its own layer automatically. You don't have to do that. And this is a type layer, okay? So if I double click the little icon, it'll select everything and I can start, you know, playing with it. Also, if you want to get in more than what is up here in this control bar, go to Window, because all our palettes live under Window. And I always forget what they call it now. Hang on. Character. And then there's the specific window for character where I get more tools that I can play with. Or I can go to my paragraph palette and it gives me more tools than's up in the control bar, okay? The control bar gives you the ones that are kind of your standard. I mean, 90% of the time you're using the control bar, okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That you want to pull up more control over, that's going to be under Windows, and that's where all your palettes live. Okay, they all live there. And the reason I emphasize that is that Photoshop, to me, the way it sort of organizes this information, a lot of it to me feels a little bit, it's not random, but it feels that way at first. So I always point out the things that are very clear. You want a tool palette that's more involved, under Windows, all of them, okay? They don't live anywhere else, okay? Also, if your control bar up here disappears, which sometimes it does, you can go Window. It usually gives you a little thing right here, Tools. Or if this disappears, if your little, this disappears, it's under Tools, under, I think it's View actually. No, it is Window. And View is pretty clear too. It's like rulers, snap to, lock guides. These are, you know, zoom in, zoom out, literally things that have to do with viewing your document. So those two things, View and Window, are fairly straightforward. Does that make sense? Because there's a lot of things in here to me that aren't straightforward, but they'll feel straightforward later. Pointer tool, which we'll get into that in a little bit. The hand tool, which I don't have this, you have to make it bigger. If I want to move this around. Now the other thing you can do is if you're on another tool, you can hit space bar and it'll go to the hand tool and you can move it around, okay? One other thing real quick, and again, I don't expect you to remember all this stuff, I'm just going over as an overview, okay? Bucket tool, I don't really care about that right now. Pin tool. This is going to become super important, okay? You have to get good at the pen tool. It's in every program, okay? And there's just no way around it, okay? Now, I'll get into this pen tool a little more later on, but what I want you to understand, because when I started with the pen tool, which I think was an Illustrator, I thought it was the stupidest tool in the world, okay? And I went, why do I need to use this? I know how to draw. I don't need this stupid tool, right? And then I went into Illustrator and I go, I'll just use the pencil or the whatever, the brush tool or whatever. And I quickly found out why you use the pen tool, okay? Because there's no control with just, you know, if you're doing a loose drawing, all that stuff, that's fine. If you're inking and doing something precise, it's not, okay? And we'll get into that later. And it's also, it's in Premiere, it's in Illustrator, it's in InDesign, it's in almost every program you're ever going to use. And then the other thing I want you to understand is there's around the pen tool, let's get rid of it for a second. Let's turn that off. This is a selection. Okay, so that is one of our selection tools, is this Marquee Tool. So when I do that and you see the little marching ants going around it, that's a selection. Does that make sense? It means something selected, okay? So if I go back up here and I go to my layer and I go Command X, it selects that out, and I go Command V and I can paste it back in because I made a selection out of it. What people make a mistake with is they think that a pen path is a selection, and it's not. So if I go like this and I select this stuff with the pen tool, and then I try and go X like I just did, it doesn't do anything, okay? I just cut out my path. But if I go over here to my pen palette, which lives under Windows where all our palettes live, which is right here, and this little icon right here, and this is going to become common. This little icon right here, if I hold Command or Control if you're on a Windows, click, it will make it a selection, okay? And the reason you're going to use the pen tool is for much more complex selections. Does that make sense? And I think it will when we start doing what we're going to do today. Any questions on that? Everybody's good? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so, okay, here's another selection tool. This is a Polygon Lasso tool. So I can click, and anywhere I stop and re-click, it'll make a fairly square selection, pointed selection, okay? The other version of that, if I click and hold it, is the Lasso tool. They're both Lasso tools, Polygon Lasso tool and regular Lasso tool. This one's more free-flowing, so I can do curves and things like that, okay? Eyedropper tool, that's not the one I want. And you know what, tomorrow, you guys, I'll go over organizing this tool palette because they kind of changed it a little bit. If you notice, it's got this little thing down here where I can click and hold it and all my other tools live, but I'll show you tomorrow how you can set it up where you can set it the way you like it, okay? So there's a bunch of tools that are down in here. So tonight or today, when you go to start doing the things that we're gonna talk about in here, and you go, that tool's not here, if you see that little three deep thing at the bottom, click and hold it, and then the rest of the tools will come out. So anyway, here's the, let's do that. But here's your eyedropper tool. If I click, you know, on a color, it changes the foreground color to that color, just samples the color. Sponge tool, what this does is if you look up here in your control bar, it has saturate or desaturate. So I'm gonna leave it on saturate. Go to that layer. And it's gonna be hard to tell with this color. What it's gonna do is, it's literally gonna, let's go way up. So if I put it way up, it's hard to see on this color because it just doesn't have anywhere to go. It'll just make the color more saturated. Does that make sense? Or if I put it on desaturate, it's a really handy tool, by the way. I can just rub over it and it'll, let's try that. Yeah. See how it's taking the color out of it? Does that make sense? So it just desaturates the color. It comes in really handy when you're doing digital painting or color correction on a photograph where you go, I want that grass to look super saturated. You can just kind of brush over that and it'll just saturate that one area as opposed to going in and saturating the whole file. This I'm not going to worry about yet. I'm not going to worry about that or that. That's your zoom tool, self-explanatory. Click and hold it, and it'll come up closer. Okay, does that all make sense? You know, is an overall.
Yes.
The other things in there. Go ahead.
It does.
Okay. How do you do that fuzzy thing with your camera?
It's my lens is messed up because I tried to wipe some. I taped over it, and I tried to get the residue off.
I want to be able to do that.
Huh?
I want to be able to do that. Make me look younger. All right. Okay, so let's look at this thing we have here. I'll put Vaseline all over it like they used to in old Hollywood. Okay, I'm going to pull up this file that I gave you guys, okay? Is there any questions on all that?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So for the Marquee tool, what's the difference between that and like the Lasso tool for like its purpose?
I'll show you right now. You mean the Polygon Lasso tool as opposed to the regular Lasso tool?
Yeah.
These two, okay, so let's look at this. I think this will answer that. I just double clicked it. By the way, you could, if you have, okay, so like when you go to the labs at school and you double click an image, it opens up in preview, which I find super annoying because I just want to open up in Photoshop. So if I go here, if I click a file and I go Command I, it brings this up and it, see right here where it says open with? Can you guys see that right here? Yeah?
Yeah.
So if it's, and this is up to you, you might want it to open preview, that's fine. I always set mine to Adobe Photoshop, and that way when I double click something, it just opens in Photoshop. I don't have to drag it onto the icon. If you don't do that, then take this, whatever your file is, and come down here and drag it onto the icon. It'll open, or you can just come in through Photoshop and just go Photo Open, okay? I like it to just, because I don't want to look at stuff in preview. If I'm looking at something, I'm probably going to do something with it in Photoshop. Okay, so here's our image that I gave you, okay? So, if I was going to, I probably wouldn't select any of this with the Polygon Lasso tool, but I just want you guys to get started. So I'm not going to make a big thing out of it. Now look, if I go with the Polygon Lasso tool, this is a very geometric object, correct? And I'm not going to expect you guys on this project for this thing to be perfect or anything. I don't expect that at all. All I want is that I can see that you guys are understanding it, okay? I want you to put your time into projects, not into exercises. What I want you to do is do the exercises. I can see that you're getting it, and then tomorrow, it'll always be the day after, more than likely. We'll go over it, and I can go over all the problems you're having with it, okay? I expect you to have problems with it. I'm not expecting you to come back the next day and go, oh, totally got it. I don't expect that, okay? This is a learning process, okay? So it's always about discussion and correction and different ways of doing things and all that, okay? Solving problems. So if I take this Polygon Lasso tool and I go, and I'm going to do this really half-assed, just for speed, because I would never select something this way. And let's just, I'm going to hold my space bar, move it up. I'll just clip it here. By the way, you're going to find out real quick that there's a lot of techniques in this. What I like when you guys start doing, because I started doing this, there's a lot of things I'm going to show you very early on that, especially with like things like movie posters, you're going to go, oh, there's that filter. Oh, there's that overlay. Oh, there's that. You'll start seeing the sameness, okay? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just, it's interesting. You'll start going, oh, that's the blah, blah, blah filter. You know what I mean? Oh, you did that with a blue overlay. I get it, you know? And you'll start doing that literally by next week. Okay, so what am I doing here? I'm making, okay, so now see how that little thing clicks right there? It's telling me I'm going over the end point, okay? Now it gives me my marching ants, correct? Now, this, if you look over here, it still says background, which means it's not a regular layer, which is not how we want to work, right? Because if I go X to cut this, I get, what do I get? It fills it with the background color, okay? I don't want that, okay? So I'm gonna go Command Z. I'm gonna hold on to my selection. You guys can all see the marching ants going around it, right?
Yeah.
So that means it's a selection. If I wanna deselect it, I go up here to select and go deselect or Command or Control D, okay? And all the hotkeys are right to your right. Can you see that? It shows you all the hotkeys on the right-hand side, okay? There's a lot of things that I'll show you guys that I literally have to go back and go, I forgot where this lives because I'm just so used to using the hotkeys, okay? So now I'm gonna double click my layer and it's gonna go, do you wanna make this a regular layer? And I'm gonna say, I'll call this original, ORI, because it's the original file. And now it's a regular layer. Now watch, when I cut it now, it's a hole, just like a stencil. It's looking through to the next, just to nothing. It's transparent, right? Now what I usually do for this kind of thing is I'm going to click right here. It's just a plus, which just means add a layer. And I'm going to say, I'll call this working. And I left a tool out of here, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And now, I don't even need to do that actually. When I go and I click this, or I go Command V, it automatically puts it on its own layer, okay? Which means I can go to my move tool and I can move it around. Now that make sense? Yeah? Okay, so what we're gonna do here, and there's a couple ways we can do this. Now we talked about filling a layer. What we're gonna wanna do here is move this somewhere. I don't care which building you pick, it doesn't matter to me. And then I'm gonna turn this off for a second. And then I'm going to go, there's a couple ways you can do this. One way I could do it is I could take my empty layer, I could go to my eyedropper tool, I could pick, I don't know, maybe this, and then go, so now I've picked this blue of the sky and go edit, not on the layer, hang on. Edit, fill, okay, oops. I want this behind it, sorry. Edit, fill. And I could start there, I don't think it's gonna help me that much. But what I basically want you guys to do is this. I want you to move one of these buildings. I want you to select it and then move it. And then we're going to go in with this tool. And we have to be, when we use this tool, we have to be on the layer we're actually working on, which actually kind of sucks, but that's no big deal. And we're going to go here. And again, this is not set up the way I like it, which I'll do tonight. I'm looking for, hang on. I should have set this up before we started, but oh well. Not my stamp tool. There it is. Okay, so you see this little icon right here? That's the clone tool or the stamp tool, okay? So here's a couple things with this. You're gonna wanna, okay, so on all these layers, if you look up here, there's this, and I'll talk about this overlay thing today a little bit. You've got that little drop-down menu, which is an overlay thing, which I'll show you in a minute. And then you have opacity here, where I can drop the opacity of the layer, okay? And up here under in my toolbar, assigned to only this brush, which is this stamp brush right now, I have the same thing. I have an overlay thing, which means it'll just apply it to my brush, not to the layer, okay? And I also have opacity, okay? And whenever I'm doing this kind of clone stamping stuff, I drop the opacity down. I go over to my brush information, and I make sure that the hardness of the brush is fairly soft, which is right here, okay? So look at the icon of the brush. Can you see that? How it goes to soft and then it goes to hard edge. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to leave it soft. Because if I go over here now, I'm on my layer I want to work on. By the way, if you want to turn that off, you just hit your eyeball icon, okay? And I'm just going to come in here, and I have to hold Option or Alt, I think, on Windows. Option, and what that does is see how it changes it to like a little sight kind of thing? What that's telling the computer is like, I want to sample from this area, so I want to hold Option and click, okay? Now, see how it carries that information over? Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
And now when I come here and I start painting with this, and then you can also see it's got a target to the right of my actual brush. What that's telling you is where it's pulling the information from. Can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. So that's important because as I'm doing this, I want to make sure it doesn't just look completely, you know, random, okay? So what I'm doing here, now I'm going to reset it. Okay, I'm going to go, I want to pull from right here. And I'm just going to pull it straight over. And I'm starting to pull, I'm starting to just paint with the stuff that's to the right of it. And I got a little sloppy right there, but that's okay. So what I'm going to want you to do is get a building, whatever it is, I don't care, select it out, or make a selection, Command Exit, Command V it, cut and paste. It'll V it, it'll paste it onto its own layer. And then I want you to start painting that sky back in, okay? And then you can take these things, and we can get pretty out there with it at some point. We'll start working on that tomorrow. And then I'm gonna wanna go, I need something, I don't know, down here, you know, I gotta fill some of this in. You know, where am I gonna pull that from? It might just be that I just take my paint brush, and I don't wanna do this on the same layer, I'm gonna do it on this layer underneath. And maybe I'll just go take my eyedropper, pick a color, and just start to find some things I can fill this in with. Again, I don't want this to be perfect. It's fine. I just want you to start playing with the selection tools, the stamp tool, and then like I could take this building and go, I'm going to repeat it back here. And all I got to do is drop this layer behind this layer. And by the way, you don't have to hold shift anymore when you're adjusting. When you want to constrain this type of image, they just change this. You used to have to hold shift. Now you don't hold shift. If you want to constrain it, you just grab it and pull it. If I hit shift, it's actually going to then go, oh, you want to be able to bend it and do all that, okay? Which I don't want to do. And I'm going to put this in the background somewhere. I'll put it back here, make it smaller, let's say. And then another simple tool that you can go up to image. You have to have your layer selected. I'm going to go to image, adjustments. Okay, this is going to become, I only want you to start playing with 3 things in here. The first one is adjustment levels. So I'm going to level this. Okay, levels basically just pulls up your darker light. Okay, if that building was going back in perspective, it's going to get lighter in value and less saturated. Okay, so I'm going to go. This represents the dark, this represents the mid-tone, and this represents the high. I'm just going to go to the mid-tone and make it a little lighter in value. See how it sits back a little more?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to go to Image, Adjustment, same place, and go to Hue, Saturation, or Command U. Levels is just Command L, that's easy. Hue, Saturation is Command U. Pull this up. I'm going to take this middle one. So watch, if I push this up, see how saturated that gets, right? If I pull it down a little bit, it just desaturates a little bit where it feels a little more natural, okay? I can also, and I'll show you this later. I'll leave it there for now, that's fine. And then the other one is, I think the only 2 I'm worried about. Oh, brightness and contrast. They just do exactly what they say. If I hit the brightness one, it's going to get brighter. If I hit the contrast, it's going to push the contrast on it. That's the only 3 I want you to remember right now, okay? You probably won't need the brightness contrast one on this thing. I could go, I've had some people do this where they go, so I'd have to fill this little space in, which I'm not going to worry about right now. I don't care which building you play around with. I don't care. That's all up to you. Okay. You're probably gonna have some tricks with the stamp tool at first. People have a little bit of problems with that. What we're doing is we're gonna go through a bunch of selection tools, and there's quite a few of them. Okay. And then I'm gonna show you probably day after tomorrow. Once you go through this, we're gonna talk about the pen tool and selection. And then I'm going to show you a tool that does this almost by itself usually, and you're going to go, why didn't I just use that? Because you can't rely on those automatic tools because sometimes they interpret information and sometimes they just don't work. Okay, so you have to be able to go in by hand and do these things by hand and also use the selection tools that just work good for the job. Does that make sense? You have to know everything from the ground up. I'm a big believer in that. Fundamentals. If you don't know fundamentals, you're screwed. Okay. If somebody teaches you nothing but a bunch of Photoshop tricks, you're screwed, okay? All right, does that make sense so far?
Yes,
Yeah.
it does.
Yep.
Okay, so go ahead. Is somebody saying something? Okay. You know, I could go to, let's see if I can do this real quick. I could go to Google. And I don't expect you to do this.
You know, I think with this, I understand the tools.
Yeah.
I think I understand the tools pretty well, but just like layering the layers and how like things stay on each layer and like pulling them, I think is like a little more difficult for me to grasp.
Okay, so like order layer?
Yeah, like how to work on each layer without disturbing the one below it necessarily.
okay.
And, like what's on what. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so here's the thing about layers. They're actually one of the few things, or I shouldn't say a few things. They're actually one of the things in Photoshop that's pretty straightforward. So if I want something like this building, I want it behind, I just have to look at the layer order and literally just pull it wherever in just think of it as just like in the real world, where if you have layers of paper on top of each other, right?
Yeah.
Transparent paper, tracing paper, right?
Yeah.
And then I go, oh, I want this to be underneath it. You would just take that and shove it underneath that layer, right? It's the same thing, except here, like if I want this back building to now be on the front, I would just drag it up in front of the other one.
I see. Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I see that. And when you're working on one layer, like if I click on something else just on the project we're working on, like will that shoot me back to the other layer that it's on?
Yeah. Like
How
if
can I
come on
lock
here and if I go, I want to paint on this layer, okay?
Yeah.
But then I do this all the time. Everybody does. You forget that you're on this layer. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you go,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to start painting. And now you're like, oh crap, it's on this layer.
Right? Yeah.
So you really got to, number one, organize your files where you understand them. Okay. So whatever that is, like with me, I start off with like working file. If it's a background. I just keep it simple. Okay. So when I look at them at a glance, and the other thing you can do, look, if I right click or control click a layer, hang on, it'll give me this down here. See these colors?
Yeah.
So what I do is I go, whatever layer I'm like currently working on, a lot of times I go, and you'll see me do it in here. I do it in here all the time. Now, see how it put that red thing on that layer?
Definitely.
Yeah, so that tells me, like, you'll see me doing this in class all the time because I'm talking to you guys. I want to make sure that I can just look over at a glance. I'm always very big on not wasting a lot of time in class with me going, wait a minute, let me find my layer and all that crap. So that'll tell me I'm on that layer right now. And then when I'm going to work on another layer, I just right-click it again, drop down here, and I can just go no color and just go to my next layer that I'm working on currently, and I'll put a red on it.
Yeah, got you. Yeah, so it's just it's the same way like in Bridge, just an easier way to view the the layers color coordinated.
When I'm doing like a digital painting or something, there could be 50 layers in that thing. And it might be one layer might just be like leaves. One layer might be, tree trunks, whatever. So that starts to get confusing, right?
Yeah.
And then that's what I do. Or you could even go, okay, this layer is my I don't know, the one I'm working on right now. This layer I'm going to make, this is all my foliage, let's say, all my background foliage, right?
Yeah.
So I go, I want to make that one green because that makes sense to me with foliage.
Definitely.
Right? So I'll do things like that.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good tip. I appreciate it.
So let's go no color. Okay, so I got this building back here. I'm going to go over here and see if I can find this real quick. I'm just going to Google and looking for a quick image. And let's just grab, this is probably not going to work, but I'm going to use it anyway. Oh, wait. I'm just going to do this. A lot of times, you guys, I'm doing stuff just to make my point. I'm not trying to make a perfect image or anything. So let's try this. Oh, by the way, when you do a search for images, make sure you're always going to the large images. So this is not a good image to use. It's too small, but I'm just going to use it anyway. So let's go. Maybe I take out, and I'm doing this again, I'm doing this really sloppy, but that's all right. Or actually, maybe I'll just go. I'm going to have to get rid of a lot of this stuff, but that's fine. So I'm just making a quick selection. Oops. That's weird. Hang on. And it just went away. Hang on. Here it is. Wow, that's weird. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to turn this layer off for a second. So if I wanted to come in here and maybe take this, I'm going to take out a bunch of this. I'll take it out up to here maybe. I have no idea how this is going to look yet, but let's see. And sometimes, you guys, I'm going to jump forward a little bit with this stuff, but I will go back and explain it again, okay? So I just made this selection, okay? If I go up here, again, this is straightforward. If I go up here, because I might want to save that selection because I spent a lot of time on it. You're going to do selections where you actually spend a lot of time just getting that selection correct. So if I go up here to select and I go save selection, it's going to give me a dialog box. And I'm going to say, actually, that's not what I want. I want to name it Lake. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to need that selection again. I don't want to do it again. So now I'm going to turn back on my lake image. I'm going to make it probably a little, I don't know, that might work. And then I'm going to go, actually, it needs to come all the way out. Let's put it like that, or like right there. And now I can go back to select, only instead of saying save selection, I go load selection. If I had 4 or 5 of these, there it is right there. And I go, okay. Now it gives me my selection again. Now I'm going to go filter or select inverse. So instead of cutting out the lake, it's going to cut out everything around it. So I'm going to go delete. And now I could start building. If I wanted to build this as a lake, I could start to take, and I'll show you this. Don't worry about this part. I just want to show you kind of the idea. I could take this building again. And everything that I'm going to show you right now, I'll show you in more depth tomorrow, okay? Edit. All your transform tools are under edit. And I'm going to go flip vertical. Pull it in. Now here, again, we were just talking about layer order. This is now underneath the lake. I don't want it underneath the lake. So I'm going to pull it up here. And again, I'll show you this stuff tomorrow. But first, all I want you guys to do is start filling in that sky today. And again, here's my transform tools under edit. And that's cut off. I wouldn't usually do that, but that's fine for now. And I get it, you know, pulled in there. Oops. And I'm going to show you again this tomorrow. I keep stuff pops up on my other side of my window, so that's why I'm always lagging again. Hang on. Okay. Gotta find that layer. There it is. And again, I have to find my gradient tool. Here it is. And I can start to put in reflections. And then I would start to build the shoreline here and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? I'm just changing it into something else. You don't have to put a lake in it or whatever. But tomorrow, what I'm going to do, what I want today, I want at least one building moved, okay? I don't care about all the perspective and all that kind of stuff. I don't care about that, okay? I want at least one move, and it doesn't have to be this building. It can be any of these buildings. I would start with one that's a simple, like this one right here. Has all this stuff that you got to do. I don't care about that for this, okay? I want the sky cloned in, okay? So I want the image altered where I know that you've used a simple selection tool, cut and paste it into a new layer, and change something. Does that make sense? Using your selection tools, cut and paste, and the stamp tool. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And again, sometimes I get people in the skies really funky and all that stuff. We'll go over all that tomorrow. Whatever you have problems with, I'll go over with you in class, okay? I have to break the ice with you guys and just get you working, okay? Now, the other thing I want to say, and we're not going to do this yet. If you were going to do this section, like let's say this section here, that's a more complex shape, correct? So I'm probably going to come in here and go with my pen tool. And I'll start showing the pen tool either tomorrow or the day after, okay? But I just want to reiterate why you would use the pen tool. Because this is a more complex shape, and I'm just going to come down this way. So all this is curved, so I would use my pen tool because I could get a more complex curve. Can't see down here, but that's all right. And then like here, this little lip pops out. And obviously that's a sloppy selection, but you get the point. If I'm going to go in and do something very complex, from a selection standpoint, I'm going to use this tool, okay? And then I would go over here to my paths palette, because every tool has a palette, and go Command and click not the word, not the bar, the little image, okay? And it selects it, and I could go back to my, and I have to be on the layer originally, otherwise it's not going to select that layer, and go X, B, and now I have this thing that, you know, if I want to do something with this, I could do it with this, okay? But that's how I would select out a more complex shape, okay? So Polygon Lasso tool, very simple shapes. Lasso tool, very loose, you know, not a whole lot of control. Pen tool, ultra control. Make sense? Those are the three I want you to think about right now. As far as, and then the Marquee tool here, Marquee tool, Polygon Lasso tool, and then think about the pen tool, and I'll start going over the pen tool more later, okay? And then I just want this image transformed, and I definitely want that sky put back in, okay? Now remember, you have to, when you're gonna clone something, remember this, because everybody forgets this. They go, oh, I'm gonna clone this section over here. See how it's showing that white? That's what it's on. I don't know where it's getting. Well, if I start clicking it, watch. It's getting it from down there. You can see the X right there? Can you guys see it in that back building?
Yeah.
That's where it's picking up its information and cloning it, okay? So obviously I don't want that. I would want to go Option. Let's say I want to recreate this cloud. I'm going to go Option, click. Now, see how it's pulling that right there? And the reason that's working fairly, and then the other problem you got to deal with Clone Tool is now those two clouds clearly are the same shape, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to be careful with that. You don't want everything to look cloned. Also, if I put this brush, and remember, no matter what brush tool you're using, the information, there's your tool right there. There's your stamp tool. But if I click that, it's going to give me all my options for my brushes, okay? So I'm going to go, let's take this now and make it a really hard edge brush because I want you to see why I don't do that. Let's make that a real hard edge brush, and let's right here in this transparent or opacity, I'm going to go to 100%. So now let's do the same thing again. Let's take this. See how hard edge that is and ugly that is? It doesn't blend with the background at all, okay? So now if I take it, let's take it back down to 67%. So why do I do the opacity thing? Because then it builds it up in a nice way. It builds up that image. It doesn't just go just stick it on there where it looks like a hack job, cut and paste job, okay? The other thing you're gonna see very quickly is hacky tools, okay? You're gonna start looking at things and going, ah, that guy used the magic wand tool because it has that fringy edge. Nothing says amateur faster than that, okay? If somebody's looking at your work and they see that, you're gone. Nobody's gonna hire you, okay? Gotta be work clean, smart, and one of the things you wanna do is always expose you guys, whatever you're in, I don't care what it is, expose yourself to sophisticated work. Get out and see sophisticated work. Does that make sense? Because otherwise, if you're just looking at cheesy stuff all the time, and if you like cheesy stuff, who cares? I don't care. I'm just talking about training your brain to be a better designer or better whatever it is. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm going to put a lot of links out on things that I go, hey, check this out. Hey, check this out. This class actually has a blog. I'll actually post that. I forgot. And like when we start getting into like the poster idea, I'll also start thinking about it because we're going to be into it pretty quick because it's a summer class and everything's compressed. We're going to be into doing, and I think I told you this, I called a movie poster project. It doesn't have to be a movie poster. It could be, again, if you're in advertising, you go, hey, I did this thing. I think it kind of fits this project. Cool. Okay. You want to do, I don't know, video game poster. If you want to do something to do with current events, that's cool. All that's fair game. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I would start thinking about that and going, yeah, I want to do something on whatever, you know, whatever it is. I don't care. If you're an entertainment design person, you could push that a little further. That's up to you. I want to leave projects fairly creative, but I do want you to use the tools that I'm asking you to use. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So start thinking about, I always like to give you guys a heads up on what we're going to do so you can start thinking about it. Okay. I'm not an ambush teacher. I don't like that when people do that, when they throw curveballs at you. I don't like that. Okay. And I like to give you a heads up where we're going. Okay. So you can start thinking about it. Because when I had projects in school, I loved it when I would know, like, because you'd know this certain class, you know, and I go, oh, they do that cool project. And I'd be thinking about it the whole time going, I'm going to do this. You know, I just like doing that. I still like doing that. Okay. Okay. Another thing I'm going to go over real quick, because it's going to be really important, is if I take, and again, there's certain things I'm jumping to here where we're not going to get to this by tomorrow, but it'll start making more sense, okay? I'm going to create a new layer here, because if I took this same image and I go, I'm going to put my light back. And I go, I want to make this maybe a night view. I'm going to go here and I'm going to pick, I hate the way they set up this palette now. Let's just pick a blue, okay? Now, I wouldn't use this blue. It doesn't matter because I'm going to adjust it, okay? So I'm going to go, there's a couple things I could do. I'm just going to go, I've got a new layer, a clear layer. I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, and it's just set on foreground color. This is my foreground color. I'm going to go, and it fills the whole layer, correct? Right? But now we're going to start talking about these overlays because, again, this is fairly simple. And I'm going to go to, as you see, I can go through them, and they give me all these different ideas, okay? And one of the things I always liked about this is it gives me a little bit of randomness when I'm working. So I can kind of go, what if I throw an orange layer over there and then try a bunch of different overlays? And all of a sudden you'll go, whoa, that's kind of cool. And I like that, okay? It reminds me of happy accidents in painting. So I'm just going through these. I don't know why it's not giving me any for those. That completely changed it. And then sometimes it'll do this subtle stuff. Let me see if I can find one. Like that's pretty subtle. It's got little pops of color, but it's going monochromatic. Saturation, that's too much. Color, just makes it one color. That's nice if you want a monochromatic thing. Luminosity. So let's go up here to multiply. Because I could start to say, okay, that's sort of a night feeling, okay? And then I could go here on my layer to my opacity and maybe drop that opacity down a little bit. And it starts to feel a little more like almost nighttime. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, and we'll get into this a little later. If all the stuff I'm showing you will be doing by the end of this week, okay? But I'm just giving, again, I'm giving you a heads up. So I could take this now and I could go over here to my brush, or just hit B, now go to brushes, and I can pick a brush here, and let's pick a, this is my favorite brush. I don't know if it'll work for this, but let's see. And I'm gonna put a new layer on here, and I could start going, okay, maybe this has got some, that's really heavy-handed, but that's fine. Maybe this has got some like a heliport up here and it's got light up there or whatever. And I could do the same thing where I drop it down. It's not quite so strong. I could come in here. And I'd have to find this color. And maybe it's just a lighter version of this, but I'm gonna just try this. Usually lighting in buildings tends towards greenish, bluish or yellowish. Okay, so let's go a little lighter. I want a little, like that sickly greenish color. And again, okay, so I'm gonna put another layer on here again, because I want to be able to control all these things. I'm just gonna fill it. And then the reason this doesn't matter as far, and I know that's a sloppy selection, is that I can go with my, remember we talked about hue saturation? It's right here under image adjustments. And I can go through the spectrum here and start to pick a color I like better. And I think over here, and then desaturate it a little bit. And then again, I might just try some overlays. And I can start to light up the windows. Does that make sense? And I can start to very easily get a night view, a night shot. Now, anybody who's in, and I love doing this because I could go through here in about 15 minutes and just light this whole city up. Anybody who's in, you know, doing digital painting or any of that kind of stuff, or even graphic designers, if you're taking an image and you want to be able to, or like if you're doing like a concept painting or something, it gives you some mileage in it, because if you did one painting, then you can go, okay, here's this day shot, and then in a half an hour you can have a night shot of it and be able to take that into a meeting and go, here's day shot, here's night shot, here's early morning, sun's coming up, and you're just using the same image, you're just kind of manipulating it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And same thing with
Yeah.
for graphic designers. Like, you guys should start looking at, I mean, you know this already, but you should start looking at this with a hypercritical eye. Go look at any high-end magazine, especially fashion magazines. And this is what's interesting right now, is there's a place now that's between illustration and between photography when you're talking about advertising and all that kind of stuff. Somebody in here said they're in advertising, okay? Where it's like, even the people you're seeing now are so hyper, they're hyper photoshopped. I mean, nobody looks like that, okay? Like, you go look at Vogue magazine or whatever, or any of these celebrity magazines or whatever, nobody looks like that. These people are hyper photoshopped, okay? Even their body shapes are hyper photoshopped. They slim down their legs. They do all this stuff to them, okay? So anybody who thinks that that's an idealized idea of beauty is like, you're crazy. You're never gonna look like that, okay? That's computer, that's technology. And also look at it with product. When you look at a product shot in a high-end magazine or wherever you see it online or whatever, really look at it, because I mean, they are so crazy photoshopped that they're not really photography anymore, but they're not quite illustration either. You're living somewhere in between, okay? And you need to start looking at that. I think it's important to look at that. There's certain shots I see of like watches and things like that where you look at it and you're going, man, you can see what they did to it in some cases. Some people are just so good at it. That's what they do. They're so good at it that you don't see it. All you know is like, nothing looks that perfect, okay? And the reason that's important is like, whatever you're doing, because I've had this happen a lot of times where I'm doing a product and I get a photo from somebody. They go, here's the photo we want to use for something. And it's terrible, okay? We're going to do an exercise in here to do that. We're going to, take a really crappy picture. We'll probably start it maybe this week. Take a really crappy picture and fix it, okay? And it's I don't think it's tedious or anything, but, and I also want you guys to understand, I'm trying to give you a base understanding, a fundamental understanding. So we have to do these things, and then we can start, as we move into this class further along, and we can start doing the fun stuff and all that stuff, but you can't jump into the fun stuff. Or when I was learning this stuff, I wanted fundamentals, I wanted foundations. All this stuff I ate up, I liked it, okay? But I'm trying to give you a good, solid, fundamental understanding, so when you leave here, you're not doing process steps or whatever, you're doing your own thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
And then also, it's important to me that I want to tell you guys this. I usually tell you this at the end of the class, but now I do at the beginning. I'm always available from now on, okay? So after this class is over, I'm available forever, because what this class is designed to do is when you're going to go into other classes, you have this knowledge of Photoshop. So when you go into another, you know, it could be Steven's class, whoever, where he's going, I'm not here to teach you Photoshop. I'm not here to teach you Illustrator. I'm here to teach you advertising or whatever he's going over. And he's correct. So when you're in a class, because a lot of the stuff, you're going to get all this stuff by the end, but there's going to be stuff you forget. And then there's going to be stuff where you go, hey, I'm in Steven's class. I want to do this really kick-ass thing, kind of like this, and come to me with that, okay? And we'll work on that sort of as an independent thing, and I'll help you do that, because I don't want you bothering them with that, okay? They want to stay on task with their thing. I was hired as a foundational instructor, which means I need to get you guys trained up so when you go into another class, you're ready, okay? And I don't want them going, I can't teach all these kids, because I have it in some of the classes I teach, where I'm like, man, you've never even touched Photoshop, you know? You're not ready for this class, okay? So that's sort of what this was designed for. So I want you to understand, like, whatever you want to do after this class, come back to me and talk to me about it. And if you want to do a very elaborate project or somebody with something we didn't do in here, come back to me and talk to me about it. We'll go over it and I'll work with you on it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And also with
Yeah.
this, what we're doing in this class, I know I say this over and over again, but I want it to be clear. Whatever you're having problems with, you've got to come back to me and tell me, okay? Do not sit in this class and go, I don't really get this, but okay, I guess I'll just go on to the next thing. Don't do that, okay? Because I can guarantee you whatever thing you think is a stupid question, 5 people in this class have the same question. I guarantee you, okay? Because I found that out from my education when I always use this story. When I was in basic drawing, they had you draw those basic shapes, which is fine, but nobody explained to me why I was doing that, okay? And I was like, why am I drawing a cone? Why am I doing this? Okay, yeah, your cone looks good. Okay, now do a square. Why am I doing a square? I don't know why I'm doing this. Like, why am I doing this? Okay? And I felt like I was the only guy in the class that didn't get it. I was like, well, everybody else seems to get this. So I didn't ask that question, like, why are we doing this? Okay? And then now, years later, when I talk to people, they go, oh, I didn't know why I was doing that either. I had no idea. Okay, so I don't want anybody doing that. I don't want to be saying anything in here that, you know, isn't being clear and making sense to everybody. Okay, so and even if you think it's a really stupid question or something, then ask me offline, okay? Or email me or something. I want to make sure that everybody's okay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
is everybody understanding what I want from you guys by tomorrow?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did the photo moving the building in the sky.
Yeah, moving the building. Okay, and the other thing with your clone tool, because you're gonna run, everybody runs in the same problems. Make sure you sample the area by, you know, you're in your stamp tool and you hit option, click, and that's the area it's gonna sample. Also, if I'm gonna sample an area, let's say I'm up here, or let's say I'm on this layer, and I go, okay, I'm gonna clone this up here, and I go to my clone tool and I go, okay, I'm gonna sample that. See how it's not doing anything? Why? Because I have to be on the layer I'm gonna actually sample. I have to be on that layer, okay? Because that's a common mistake. And then the other thing I want you guys to understand, because I don't know, you know, where everybody is with Photoshop and all that. Don't get uptight about this stuff, okay? Like, at some point, I want you to have some fun with this, with anything we're doing, okay? And I know everything's not fun, but, you know, some of it's just hard work, and I get it. But I don't want people going in here and going, I can't figure it out. I'll help you with it. Don't worry about it, okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
especially early on like this, you know. The only thing that drives me crazy is when people are lazy, okay? That's the only thing that drives me up the wall. Other than that, I don't care, all right? Don't be lazy, you know, and work hard. That's it. The only way you're going to get good at anything is to work hard, okay? That's the magic formula. Knowledge and repetition is the magic formula, okay? You got to get good knowledge, good fundamentals, and then repetition, okay? And that's how you get good at anything, okay? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I want everybody from my class better than everybody from everybody else's class. That makes sense?
Yes.
I want
Yes.
people from my class kicking everybody else's ass in everybody else's class. I'm competitive. I'm not a douchey competitive guy, but I'm competitive with my work, okay? Which means if I'm doing my job right, my students are better than everybody else. Hang on, I got to do a screen grab here.
So, Mike, for this exercise, you're not expecting like drastic changes or anything like that. Like it can be somewhat subtle, right?
Oh, totally.
Okay.
What I'm doing here is I'm breaking the ice.
Okay.
I'm just breaking your ice. I'm breaking the ice. I'm trying to get your feet wet in this, and just getting everybody sort of started with it. Because there's always, I mean, with with anything you do, you got to start. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every time I'm doing a painting, I'm like, I gotta. Once I make a mark on there, I'm in. You know what I mean? But for some reason, there's that mental thing of like, I got to do that. Where am I going to start? I don't. What, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I call it dancing around the canvas, right? So what people always do, and I'm just equating to art because that's what I know. And they set up their easel, they set up their canvas, they put out their paints, and then they sit there and they go, I'm gonna get started on this. But you know what? I'm gonna take a class. I need to take a workshop first, and, you know, and then they'll teach me how to do this. And then, okay, now I took the workshop. Now I'm gonna, okay, let me think about this. And they dance around the canvas for 100 years. And it's like, just start painting. You know what I mean? None of this stuff happens until you just start doing it. And we all have to suck at it for a while. You know what I mean? We all have to suck at it for a while. And then you get better at it. And then you get victories. And the victories propel you forward. Because if I'm doing my job right, you will have victories. And you'll go, wow, I couldn't do that last week. That's cool. And it makes you feel good. It makes me feel good anyway. Okay? Any time that I level up on something, man, I don't care how long I've been doing this, 30 years, whatever it is, it makes me feel awesome, you know? And if I do a painting that I don't hate, it makes me feel great for like a month, okay? I mean, you know.
Until the next thing.
Huh?
Until the next thing you start.
Right, until the next thing, right. And here's what I always say. When you have victories, wallow in them for a day or two. Feel good about it. And then move on. And then go, okay, now I got to get another one. And the goal for me is, because this is what happened to me, it becomes like a drug where you're like, I want another hit of that, okay? When I went to Fullerton, then I got into the student show, and I think I won something. I'm like, okay, that feels good. I want another hit of that. And then I won some poster competition for the Red Cross, got written up in the LA Times, interviewed on TV, all this stuff happened. I went, I want more of that. And it's just victories. It's victories, victories, victories. And then got into Art Center. Okay, that feels good. Now I want to kick ass over here. Got my ass kicked for a year. And then, you know, start having some victories again. And then go from there, go to Imagineering. Like, holy shit, I'm in Imagineering. You know, I just wanted those. You want to get addicted to goals. You know what I mean? Like, you know, just goals. Whatever that is. And as we move into this, like some of you guys are going to have more knowledge in Photoshop, like with this kind of thing. If you want to go further, because I've had students, a lot of them do that, where they go, hey, I'm going to go a little further with it. That's totally cool. I'm never going to fault anybody for going further, okay? But like tomorrow, I'll get more into what I would do with this, like maybe the lake idea, and we're going to start using the pen tool because we have to start using the pen tool. And then we're going to go in, we'll do a color, we'll do what I said, where we take a really horrible photo and fix it. And then once you get past that, that's like probably the driest thing we'll do. And then we'll go into start doing like a poster idea and things like that. Okay. And then we'll be able, and by the way, with the poster idea, you can use pictures of yourself for that. You can use people, whoever you want. I don't care. Okay. I actually think it's fun sometimes when people use pictures of themselves for that, because they aren't usually great pictures. You know, they're with a cell phone or something. So then we have to go, okay, how do we make this look like a great picture, right? Which is what Photoshop's good at, okay? I'm a terrible photographer. I'm a good videographer, but I'm a terrible photographer. So every time I had to take a picture for anything, I had to Photoshop the living crap out of it to get it to look good, because I'm not a great photographer, okay? But I could do, I'll show you something tomorrow that I had to do that with, and see if I can find the back behind the scenes pictures of it. But I had to, you know, really Photoshop the hell. I still do, really. I'm a little better now, but I'm still not great at it. And by the way, you're not seeing anything that's not being Photoshopped. Why do you think Instagram is so popular? Because it has very simple filtering tools on it that make a photo look a lot better, okay? That make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so tomorrow I'm gonna have a building moved, sky put back in, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And by the way, you know, pick a building like that one I picked. And by the way, I'm not gonna get crazy yet about selections. I mean, I don't want crazy, terrible selections, but like if you look here, there's a curve right there. You see that?
Yeah.
So in reality, I would never use this tool because this tool doesn't really like to make curves. See that? And the reason I wouldn't use this polygon, and I don't care if you use this for tomorrow. I don't care about that. That's fine. And the reason I wouldn't use this is I don't have much control over this. See that? I don't have a lot of control over that. If I was going to do this in reality, I mean, there's a bunch of ways I would do it. Damn it, I always do that. Hang on.
How do you get rid of a selection again?
You can go Command D or Control D on Windows. So I could just go Command D. Hang on, I'm not on it. So I let go of it. The other way you can do it if you forget is it's right here under Select, because we're talking about a selection. And then we can just go to Deselect right there. And if you look right there, there's the hotkey, Command D. Okay? But if I was going to do this in reality, I'd probably, actually, there's another way I'll show you later. It's even easier. I would go in here with my pen tool. Oops. And then I can make that nice curve right there and then come back down in here. And I could take my tools and I could adjust it. Okay? That's how I'd probably do it. I'd actually probably do it using an automatic tool because I think this would automatically select pretty good. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mike, I have a question.
Yeah.
So let's say you're in the middle of a selection and you want to backtrack to like a previous point that you made on the selection. How do you do that?
Well, with the pen tool, you can just Z out of it. Okay.
Okay.
With the hang on, let me get rid of this. I don't know why that's there. With Polygon, I don't think you can do that. Let me see. Yeah, it doesn't let you do it. Hang on. Yeah, it doesn't let you do it with that. But again, I don't really look at the polygon or the lasso, the polygon lasso or the lasso tool. I don't really look at those as very precision tools.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I look at the pen tool, and you've got to get good at the pen tool. And by the way, if you guys haven't used a pen tool, you will probably hate it at first, and then it will become second nature, just like everything else. Okay. Well, again, when I started it, I hate this tool. Okay, now I love it. And what's really good about that is like when you go into Illustrator, it's all pen tool. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Illustrator, I can burn through a pen tool illustration like nothing flat. And I've had to do it. I've had it where they go, we're going to do a kid's activity book. And I'll go, okay, that's cool. When do we need it? Tomorrow. You're like, are you kidding me? I got to do like a 5-page kid's activity book by tomorrow? And then I go into Illustrator, pen tool, and just start doing it. Okay. I did a kid's flashcard set, and they all had so what is it, 26 letters in the alphabet or whatever. So it had 26 illustrations, okay, for each one of them, because they were like fun looking. And I did that in either a day and a half or 2 days, 26 illustrations, because I'm fast at the pen tool. So I would just do a quick sketch, send it over to the client, go approve it. I'd send them like 5 or 6 at a time, approve it, and they'd approve them, and then it'd come back. I wouldn't even refine them. I just go in and start pen tooling them in Illustrator, and it's just super fast. Okay, All that, and by the way, that kind of skill set is pretty unique. So if you develop a good, what I've seen over the years of hiring and all that stuff is all these skill sets sort of going away, where I'm getting people and I go, okay, Photoshop, who cares? Like, overlays, all that typical stuff that everybody does. It's really interesting too, when you look at a lot of portfolios, you look at stuff, and it's just like everybody has the same thing in their portfolio, right? And then all of a sudden you get somebody with a real skill set and you go, boom, hired, that's it. You know what I mean? Okay, I just interviewed 20 people and you're the only one that I want to hire. Does that make sense? Skill sets and broad skill sets, okay? You can be a specialist, that's totally fine. Again, that's not the path I went down because I like doing a lot of different stuff, okay? I liked coming into Imagineering going, you're working on the lighting, you're working on the effects, you're working on the furniture, you're working on the retail space, you're working on and on and on, okay? I like that, okay? And if you're a really good designer, whatever your field is, you want to be broad because you don't want to be sitting there waiting for the phone to ring for that one thing you're good at, because you're going to have to work as something else if you're going to do that and be a part-time designer. You need to be really good at your job. And one other thing, if you're especially a graphic designer, you need to go over and take a class with print technology about the printing side of this, okay? Otherwise, you're not employable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And by the way, it's a playground over there anyway. You'll have a blast over there, okay? You can do crazy cool stuff over there. I love that department, okay? And I direct kids over there because I think it's really important. And I don't care if you're an illustrator, whatever. Knowing the print process is smart. And do not buy into this crap that there's no more print stuff. That's BS, okay? Number one, those numbers are coming back up and ebooks are going down. Packaging, on and on and on. Okay, so if you think print technology is dead, you're crazy. Okay, it's never going to be dead. Does that all make sense?
Yes.
Questions?
I have one of those stupid questions.
There's no such thing.
Well, I mean, I keep forgetting. So you're talking about option keys at shift on Windows.
What is it? Oh, Windows. Okay, so here's what it is with Windows. On the Mac, you have your command key.
Yeah.
Apple key, whatever you call it. And then sometimes you do the option, and then sometimes you do control. On Windows, command is control, I think, and option is alt.
Okay, alt. Oh, that's right. Okay. All right, thanks. And then one other stupid question. I always get caught up on, like, when you cut out the building, and I know you get the selection, and you did X.
Yes.
So to cut it out and like move it around, it was, what is it? You just press X, but for Windows.
Okay, X is going to cut it.
Okay.
And then Control or Command V is going to paste it in. It'll paste it onto its own layer on its own.
Okay.
And then if I want to move it,
Then you use the little, yeah.
I just go to that.
Yeah, got that.
Oh, here's another thing, you guys, real quick. Right up here, see that? When I'm in my Move tool where it says Auto Select.
Uh-huh.
And then it says Layer. So you can go to Group. I don't like Group. I go to Layer. And some people don't like Layer, which is weird to me. But like what that does is if I go, whatever I click on, like now I want to touch this building, I can just click on it and it selects it. So if you click, you don't have to do it. Go to Move.
Uh-huh.
If you unclick this, it won't do that. So if I go like that, now it won't pick any layer that I'm picking on. But if I click that, and I like that because I can just go, okay, I want to select the background. I want to select this building. I want to select the lake image, whatever it is. And I can do it. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. So on that particular layer of what you want to move, you're saying it'll just move it if it's on auto select.
Yeah, if it's on auto select, whatever I take the little move tool and I click, it'll go, bing,
It'll move
select that layer. It'll select whatever layer that's on. It also comes in really handy when you start having a lot of layers.
Right.
You're like, oh, crap, what layer is that tree on? If you have that on, you can just go click the tree and it'll go bink right to that layer. Okay?
Okay.
What I want to, go ahead.
I see. Yeah, I got it.
What I want to get through, hopefully, in here is trying to make this logical, where it makes some sense, okay? Because again, my experience with Photoshop, and I think it's a lot of it's just me. I just didn't get it. Okay. I mean, I just didn't get it enough where I abandoned it until I had to learn it. Okay. And there's a lot of, like, if I was working freelance right now, I'd have to know 3D and all that stuff, which I don't. Okay. Because I was running teams, and you don't do 3D when you're running teams and stuff. You have people that do it. But now you can't, there's so much now in the skill set for you guys who are coming into this world now. And there's a lot of, and I talk about this all the time because I think it's interesting. There's a lot of old farts like me that come in and they go, oh, these kids, it's so much easier and all this stuff. They have all this technology and blah, blah. And it's like, that's such a bunch of horse crap, because you guys got to know all the same stuff I knew, drawing, painting, you know, if you're in that world, or with graphic design and all that. But then you got to know motion graphics, 3D, UI, UX, plus all the skill set I have, Adobe Suite. I mean, it's this gigantic skill set they want you guys to have. You know what I mean? So it's actually, I think, a lot harder. Okay, because I could go out of, you know, I didn't have to learn Photoshop and all this stuff when I came out. I just had to be a good designer and illustrator and painter. You know what I mean? Different, you know.
Yeah.
So just, you know, make sure that you're always thinking about that idea of industry standard software and things like that, because you need to know those things. I think they're actually super exciting, and I think it actually allows you guys to do a lot of overlap with your skill set, which I think is really exciting, where graphic designers are taking images and, you know, putting them into motion and After Effects, and I mean, just so much cool stuff where your skill set is like so expanded because you can go across different worlds. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You can do motion graphics for television, for film, for, you know, that's, you know, it's just not siloed off as much as it used to be, which I think is really interesting, which is what I was always interested in my career, was I want to do all kinds of stuff. I don't want to get pigeonholed into something, you know? Yeah, I want to do package design. I want to do theme park design. I want to do illustration. I want to do this. I want to do product design. I want to do toy design. I want to do all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I didn't want to be limited. And I think it's interesting because you're going into stuff all the time. You're like, wow, I don't know if I can do this, but I guess I'll find out, you know? And that was fun to challenge myself all the time. And I'm still challenging myself. But anyway, I want to try and make this into a logical conversation where you it makes sense. Again, the way I was taught it made no sense. It was just a bunch of steps, and I'm going, I don't get how this stuff all relates to each other. What I want it to do is all relate to each other, because the only way you're going to be able to actually use this stuff in a useful way is if you know how to use the tools in the way you need to use them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And by the way, you will cobble together your own way of working. You'll learn stuff from me. You'll learn stuff from this person. You'll learn stuff in this class. You'll learn a lot of stuff from each other. And all those things will come into your way that you cobble together that you like to work, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And if we're doing our job right, I think that's what should happen, is that you guys kind of become your own, you know, have your own work methodology and all that kind of stuff. I just want it rooted in good, solid fundamentals, that's all. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so tomorrow we know what we're doing, right?
Yes.
And by the way, tomorrow, this is the first thing we've done, okay? Tomorrow's discussion. Don't get all uptight about it. It's discussion. We're going to go over it. And then tomorrow, you're going to have a folder. I'm going to put it up. I'm going to put this video. I'm going to edit it right after this. It will be put up as soon as as soon as I can put it up, I'll put it up. Again, it might still be processing. Give it an hour or something. I'm also going to put a folder on there, which by 10 o'clock tomorrow, I want all your files just layered, okay? And by the way, when you save these, well, let's save this. It's going to give you this. Save to the cloud. I'm not saving it to the cloud. Or save on your computer. I want to hit that one. You know, wherever it's going to go. And okay, so this, see that right there? Here's your drop-down menu. We're going to save it as a native Photoshop file, okay? Which is going to be a PSD file right here. Why am I saving it like that?
It saves your layers.
Right. It saves my layers, okay? So if I go to, you know, JPEG or something, it's going to flatten it. And then I want your layers, okay? Because I want to be able to go through your file and see what's going on, okay? Because tomorrow, and I also want something clear in here. This class is a lot about discussion, about your work, you know, correcting, and not just correcting, but going, hey, this is working great, all that kind of stuff. It's a discussion, okay? It's not I don't want this, it's not putting you on the spot. It's not doing that kind of crap. I want discussion. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing if we're going to do a crit in here. The crit is constructive criticism. I'm not into that. And by the way, I had teachers who did that, and they were great. I had teachers who just tore you to pieces and crits, and it was great. Okay, it worked for them. I'm not into that. Okay, I'm into, my job actually is to go, here's what's working, here's what's not working, and here's how to fix what's not working. That's my job. Okay. So I want, and the reason I'm saying that is I want everybody in here comfortable in the discussion and comfortable asking questions and comfortable when I'm doing a demo asking questions. I want a comfort level in here so people are talking and telling me what they're not getting and all that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, good. So I like a lot of discussion. I think I've said that, but I do. I like a lot of discussion. And I like a lot of questions. And I like a lot of, hey, if I want to do this. And I like all this stuff. It's exciting to me. Every class I teach, I think is exciting to me. Okay? Art is exciting to me. Anything to do with it is exciting to me. Talking about it is exciting to me. Okay? I can sit here and talk about this thing I can talk about this crap for 8 hours. Okay?
Mhm.
And trust me, everybody in my life knows that because they get sick of hearing me talk about it. Okay, so it has here, and you're going to save it as a Photoshop thing, right? Make sure you're signed into Google, and then all you have to do is just, open the folder and drag it into the folder. You just got to be signed in because a lot of times people go, it won't let me in. You're not signed in. Okay, and everybody should have a Google account. I mean, you can't survive without a Google account. Okay, and then tomorrow I want to go over a little more, kind of what I was talking about here, taking this a little further, and pen tool. And yeah, I'll probably just take it a little bit further and kind of like when I'm doing this lake thing or whatever. What else? I think that's it. Okay, unless you guys got any questions.
I wrote you a message on chat about, I sent an email to you.
It's a chat or email?
It's on chat. No, I mean, I wrote it on chat, what I did yesterday.
Okay. Thank you.
So is the platform Canvas to write messages or email?
Oh yeah, you can go through Canvas. Okay, so everything I do, I will hub through Canvas. Okay, usually through announcements. Yeah, you can communicate with me through that. I might have missed it. I
Okay.
do kind of remember it. Once in a while I miss them. I try not to do that. Especially right now, I don't really have any excuses because I have one class. Usually I have 5. So everything will be hubbed through Canvas. The only thing I don't use Canvas for the most part is I don't have you guys upload files through Canvas. It's easier to do it through a Google Drive.
Okay.
But that's about the only thing I can think of. Anything, like if I get hit by a bus, it'll be on Canvas. Okay, so like if I go, hey, I got hit by a bus, I can't go to class tomorrow. That'll be on Canvas. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, everything will be through announcements on Canvas. That's how I do it. And then like if I see somebody who's, I don't know, falling behind or something, I'll send them an email or something and just go, hey, I don't have any of your work. Okay.
Mhm.
So I don't know what's going on with you. Again, I'm not a big fan of lazy. I'm a big fan of hard work. Okay. I think anything you want to do is just hard work, and that's that. And if you don't have a great work ethic, if you're late for a class that the classroom is literally in your house, that makes no sense to me. Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense to me to be late anyway. I always say I'd rather be 3 hours early than 5 minutes late. I can't stand it. I hate being late. It speaks about your professionalism,
Yeah.
And by the way, your professionalism starts the second you walk into a classroom in college. Okay? That's where you start. There's a reason why they call that your college career, because it is actually part of your career. It's where you're training, starting to produce work, starting to build a portfolio. It's part of your professional life. So you need to start treating it like that. Okay? Because I got news for you. In the real world, in this world, you miss deadlines and that kind of stuff, or you show up for meetings late, you're gone. Nobody's going to tolerate it. Nobody. Okay? If I hired a freelancer and they were 5 minutes late with that thing, I'm done. You can't have that. Okay? Because it just puts a lot of stress on people where they're like, I need this thing you're doing because I got to go into a meeting and, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? You're always in a pipeline in a creative process. And I don't care where you are in that pipeline. You could be, like I was a creative director or whatever. I still got to answer to somebody. I still got to go into meetings and present work. I might be making decisions around what my team's doing, but then I got to go present that stuff to senior management or whatever, and I need to have those things on time. Does that make sense? Because I can't go into that meeting and go, oh, I got this lazy person on my team that always is late. They're going to go, dude, nuh-uh. You didn't show up with what you're supposed to show up with. I don't care what's going on with your team. That's you. You're mismanaging your team then. That's what they're going to say. There's no excuses, for anybody. There's just no excuses, because if I don't have something that somebody on my team is supposed to do, then I'm not managing my team correctly. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So all I'm saying is take this stuff seriously, and I know some people in here aren't in that major or whatever. That's fine. Okay. I get that. There's a little less commitment in that area. I understand that, but I still think it's part of your professional behavior, because I don't care what field you go into. It's probably the same thing. I only know this field. It's the only field I've ever been in. Okay. And by the way, if you guys have other questions, like I've said, about other things, tell me. Okay. If it's about painting, it's about design, it's about industrial design or product design, any of that stuff, talk to me about it. I like all that stuff. Okay. And I've worked in all those fields. All right.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So I will see you guys at 10:30 in the morning, right?
Yep.
Oh, and I will edit this right now and put it up online.
Sounds good.
I usually edit out the beginning and the end. That part where everybody's just like milling around and talking, and then the end, like this part right here, I'll probably,
Yeah.
Okay. But you guys can always scrub through. Who cares? Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay, you guys.
All
Thank
right.
you. I'll see you in the morning.
See you tomorrow.
Okay,
Bye.
Thanks, Mike. Bye.
Oh, Mike.
Yeah.
I that's what I wrote you the email. I didn't sign in yesterday because I didn't know its class started yesterday.
All right, then I'll swap that.
And I didn't know if you took roll today, but
Yeah, I took roll.
okay.
I'll go back. How do you pronounce your first name?
Ildiko.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Thank
Is
you.
that your birth certificate name?
Yep.
What is that?
Hungarian.
Oh, Brian's Irish, right?
Yes.
Is it Irish?
Yeah. Well, no, it's Hungarian.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then, say it again. How do you pronounce it?
Ildiko.
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 That's cool.
Or Ildi for short. Yeah.
I'm half Irish. I'm half Irish and half Mexican. So even my name to me doesn't sound like anything. Like Sheehan doesn't sound Irish to me. It doesn't sound like anything.
That's Irish, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
My dad was Irish. My mom was Mexican. Is Mexican.
Okay.
So it would have been Revis if it wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't Sheehan. Anyway, I'll add you on there.
We're all mixtures, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. Right?
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that, sorry, I didn't forget to sign on.
Okay, that's fine. All right.
Okay, thank
I'll talk to
you.
you guys in the morning.
Okay.
We'll go over everything.
All right.
All right. Bye, Mike.
Bye.
Hey, bye.
Hey, Mike, I had a quick question.
Oh, okay.
So I work right now full time. Because of the pandemic, I'm still working remotely. And
Okay.
I've talked about it with my supervisor because they really want someone to learn Photoshop, and I want to learn Photoshop as well. So
I'm super into that.
thank you. Thank you. So I'm working a couple hours before class, and then I'm working the remainder of my shift right after class as well. And so sometimes I may have trouble attending class because there'll be meetings scheduled during the class time as well. And I don't want to be picking and choosing, but I think I will have to go for these like high-profile meetings for the company.
Well,
So
I mean, if it's work, that's one thing. They're not going to be all the time, correct?
I'm sorry?
They're not going to be all the time, correct?
Yeah.
They won't be.
No, they will.
They'll be like once in a while, right?
Yeah, every once in a while.
Okay, I'm really into the. What do you do over there? Where are you at?
So I'm in Lakewood right now. The company is called Green Commuter, and so it's an all electric vehicle mobility service provider.
Yeah.
And so my position is to try to help disadvantaged communities and people of low income areas to adopt and EV use in those areas. And so along with that, that's including installing EV chargers, giving them subsidy so they can afford, car share and ride hailing with EVs, mainly Tesla Model X's and Nissan Leafs.
What do they want? What do they want you to do with Photoshop? Do you know?
So I work with I'm in charge of like heading the social media and marketing, and which is
Oh, okay.
something I'm not, that's not my personal background in, but I'm learning as I go.
Sure.
And so I'm always making flyers and posters for their websites and apps. And just on a personal level, I found that I really enjoy, you know, just artistry in general. And so after this class, my hope was to learn enough to make stickers and try to sell them on Instagram to make a little
Yeah,
side,
you'll know
side
how to
hustle.
do. You'll know how to do that. I'm really into that. So when you have a project at work that involves Photoshop or something like that, or whatever, make sure that there might be certain things you can incorporate into this class as a project.
Okay.
Okay. So like this, when we get to the poster thing, you know, maybe you do something for them.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Something,
works.
at least something that's sort of a, maybe you use that so you start getting your hands dirty in that idea. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like it when somebody, I had somebody, I think I told you guys, I had somebody last term who was doing learning interior design. And then, you know, so she had those really boring CAD drawings that are just not interesting, right?
Yeah.
And then she worked for the company that does the construction or something. I don't know the whole story, but anyway, anyway, she just emailed me, and we just, you know, into that class 2 weeks ago, and she goes, it looks like it was a historic home or something, and she goes, I took the window frames out of the elevation plan views, and I used those to pop them on there so they were historically correct. And she goes, but then we had to come up with the problem solving for the bottom part of the thing, you know, how they cover this up and do that. And she was showing it to me and going, here's kind of what I'm thinking. And I go, well, you know, if you want my opinion, I do this and this and this. And then she sent me an email later that day, and she goes, I just sent, because I actually thought it was fine. I didn't think it needed anything. And she goes, I sent it, and that same day, by that afternoon, and this never happens. This is the value of this. That the county approved the whole job, which is, you know, thousands of dollars for this company. She just made herself super valuable to that company. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those people were stoked. They're like, we just went through an approval process. It usually takes weeks, and it happened in hours because now we've got this person on our team who knows how to do this. I'm super into that. Okay.
Yeah.
Like if it can help you with, I mean, obviously I want everybody to help them with their career and all that. Or, you know, if they just want to do it on their own, that's fine too. But when it helps your career and makes you more valuable, I'm super into that. Okay.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. Appreciate it. This is a
That's what
relatively.
you should be doing. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that it's a relatively small and young company, so there's a lot of room for growth. And I figured, you know, I'm just a young professional just trying to, you know, make his way, so I might as well use that opportunity to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I call them freebies. Whenever I'd walk into a job, I'd find the freebies. Like I'd walk in and go, wow, that's really stupid the way they do that. And come in and go, why do you do that like that? Do it like this. And it's just a lot of it's just common sense. You know what I mean? But I always look for freebies, you know, or I'd go like, man, their presentations suck in here. I'm going to go in and do a full-on rock star presentation because they don't know how to do that. And it's going to, you know what I mean? It's all, you know, there's freebies in everything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, what you're describing to me is like, this is a small company, which is good. I can start filling a niche here that like, also what's good for you is in conjunction with all the other stuff you're doing, you're going, hey, I also do all this. And then like, you'll find out pretty quickly with Photoshop and things like that, depending on what you're doing, you'll get super fast at it. You know what I mean? The only thing
I hope so.
Yeah, you will. Look, it's just like anything else. It's like repetition, you get faster and faster and faster. You know what I mean? It's not even something you have to think about.
Well,
everybody gets obsessed with speed, and I go, speed will happen on its own. Your speed happens by doing it and doing it and doing it. That's all, right?
Yeah.
It's just repetition.
No, I get that, because up until this point, I've just been using Canva for like all the stuff that they wanted me to do, because I don't know anything about Photoshop. And I definitely understand you there, because originally my major is geography and geographic information systems. So I know a lot about GIS and Art Pro, which is the kind of the career that I wanted to go in originally. But, you know, there is no need to have, you know, that type of software or to use any of those types of projects, or I haven't found any yet for the company. And so I've figured, you know, might as well just use this opportunity to, you know, learn another new skill that I can add to the plate or add to the palette.
And the other one you might want to add at some point is Illustrator, because Illustrator is really great for infographics and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you can do a lot of it in Photoshop too, but if you put those two things together for what you just described, you'd have a pretty monster skill set when it comes to like infographics, information, all that stuff, right? And then there's a lot of things you can kind of plug into that on top of that and go, you know, like I've done this where I've done sort of maps that are illustrated that are, you know, more for fun or whatever, but I go to Google, you know, I find the right angle, I figure out where everything is, and then I kind of start building my design over that. So I know that at least just spatially it feels right, like that kind of stuff. Where I go, okay, that road actually comes down and goes like that. Okay, so I'm going to take that shape, you know, and I can take all that stuff off all these, or SketchUp, where you can go into SketchUp and you can like geolocate something. Like if you built a model in there and you go, okay, this model or this building, this place is going to be built on this piece of land. You can literally build it on that piece of land, then go through a 24-hour time frame, and Google will throw, you know, from an interior, and it'll throw the sunlight in there and show you how the sun hits that whole room all day long. You know what I mean? And it's important because if you're an architect, you sit there and you go, and it could be for other things too, but if you're an architect, you go, wow, there's just a lot of glaring light for like 3 hours of the day if I put that window there. And they figure it out way ahead of ever doing anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the nice thing is all these things sort of plug into each other together, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I just wanted to mention that to you before the class started to speed up. So
yeah, give me a heads up on that stuff, okay? Now
Yeah.
the good thing in here that we don't have in the classroom is every class we're going to do is going to be on Zoom right after the class. So whatever, you know, if you miss something, you can go on there and go, okay, I'm kind of seeing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm trying
I love that part of this thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to manage my time as wisely as I can.
Well, that's part of a career, right?
Yeah, it is. Well, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
Okay, you guys. I'll see you guys in the morning.
All right. See you, Mike. Bye.